So, good morning, dear participants. I welcome you all for the day 2 session of our data science workshop. Now I welcome the speaker, Dr. Suganya Ma'am, Assistant Director in Software Development Cell, VIT Chennai, to start the session. Ma'am, please take over the session.
Yeah, very good morning to all the participants. Actually, hope the yesterday's session may not be boring. If you have any comments, you can tell me. Today, the sort of continuation of what we have seen yesterday is what I have planned. Yesterday, we were talking about the necessity of having machine learning in practice, followed by the different statistical approaches that we need to understand before getting into machine learning algorithm. Also, we have slightly have a look at the different what to say, the packages that you should be aware of before getting started with the implementation of machine learning algorithms. Okay, today in continuation to that, we'll be looking at short introduction to different kinds of algorithm that exist in machine learning domain, and probably we could see two hands-on on taking a data set and ending up with the metrics calculation. So that's what is the plan of today. So the agenda I have written, so we'll look at a small introduction. Yesterday we had already an introduction, but this introduction is slightly different, and we'll look at the packages that are available for machine learning algorithm. We'll see what supervised learning is, unsupervised learning is, and ensemble learning, and we'll go through two data set and see how the supervised and unsupervised can be implemented. So that's what is the plan for today. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, it's clear, ma'am.
Okay. So this is a trending scenario. Hello, yeah?
Just can you go back to the previous slide, ma'am, once?
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So this is my colloquial diagram where I used to have in all my sessions. So everybody, there are three buzzwords that is there in the industry. One is AI, another one is ML, another one is DL. Okay, so the concept is all are one and the same. We could not actually distinguish. Actually, if the workshop is on AI, so probably we could see the technologies on machine learning and deep learning too. Without these two, AI doesn't persist. So all are interrelated to each other, which could be easily or diagrammatically represented like this. So on the outer layer, we have the AI technologies, which includes both machine learning as well as deep learning. So if you can relate this to any of the layered approaches that you have. Normally in a network approach, on the top we'll be having an application layer. So this application layer's responsibility is to interact with the client, right? So we do have browsers. Now I have this Google Meet browser, you have your Google Meet browser. Both are talking to each other through different layers. See, you have an application layer at your hand, I have an application layer at my hand. So it's passing through all different technology which people doesn't want to really know about. But I know that my Google Meet is talking to your Google Meet. That's all. So AI is one such layer which is actually used to represent the concepts that you are executing using ML and DL to the end users. Okay, so if there is an Alexa, as we have discussed earlier, we don't know how it is going and mining all the data that is available at the back of the Google server or any other server. We don't need to bother about that. But what we know is, given an instruction to Alexa that play this song, we need that Alexa to play that song. That's it. So given an input, the request, the response should be retrieved. So that is the AI layer. So how you want the intelligent system to be built. Okay, so a simple example is, let's say if I want to calculate the BMI of a person, we know that there is a statistical formula. If you calculate and me calculate, it will one and the same, remain the same. Okay, but if there are situations wherein if we could not really say that this is the output, if this is the input, fixed output. If you feel like, let's say if I'm collecting the feedback of the teaching from the students, right? Sometimes the when you are giving two options like good and very good, people normally can't really fit in their options between either good or very good. Okay, so they may think it is very good, but they may give the option as good, but they may think good, they may give the option as very good. It is the concept is that there is an overlying methodology, not methodology, the concept, okay, having multiple options. So if you want to come out with an output if of this kind where there is no proximity, you cannot write it like with the if simple if else statement, right? So we go for AI techniques. So there are a lot many AI techniques available, but that is not the scope of the session. Inside which you have ML algorithm. So how this artificial intelligence came in, that is by the use of this machine learning algorithm, right? So the output of this machine learning algorithm, see, as your network layer, we have all the physical layer, data link layer, and so many other layers, transport layer, everything, presentation is there, everything is there. Your data gets converted into an appropriate manner. So how this process is being done by this machine layer here, in order to when the request comes in to an intelligent system through the AI layer, it gets converted into an appropriate format, and that is being done or using the machine learning algorithm, and the results are written back through the AI layer. But what is the difference between AI and deep learning? That is the next question, right? So AI is actually let's say we'll see with an example. Normally, I used to talk about the sugarcane juice in ML and deep learning, which I feel is very comfortable. So machine learning, if you see, we could see a lot of sugarcane juice vendors on the roadside, right? They'll be using a machine wherein if you feed your sugar can, it will come out squeezing the juice in a bowl kept at the side of the machine, right? So the person who's doing this will try to look at the chunk that is coming outside. If he feels some more juice is there, again he will feed it, right? And if he feel, suppose they let's say this is the last sugar can and he doesn't have anything more, then again what will happen, he will try to squeeze the juice as much as possible, depending on how much juice you want. If somebody is in need of a thick juice, right? So without worrying about the money, right, he will feed in the sugar can only once or twice to get the thickest juice. But if people are worrying about the money, he will squeeze the sugar can juice at a very any number of times until he feel that the chunk is very dry and he could not get it anything back, right? But nowadays, if you go to a very big shops wherein this complete sugar cane juice maker is available, you could see a lot of compact machines assembled everything inside. Okay, so the machines, what they will do, if you insert your sugar cane machine, automatically the chunks alone will come out, which you cannot feed in. It will squeeze out the juice how much ever is possible, and whatever you are getting at the side is the best possible output that you can get. So you don't need to bother about whether it's you need to feed in again you need to worry about the output. Nothing is possible, only the best output it will give us. So you can I used to relate this machine learning and deep learning in such a way, right? So in machine learning, we for the data set we run any algorithm, then we look at the output, right? So if the output is convincing enough for us, okay, fine, the machine will start working that. Otherwise, if you feel like something more info, some more better information you can acquire from the data set, or you may be in need of adding some more extra experiences to the data set, anything is possible. And but manually, you every time you have to look at the output, change the parameters. So that parameters is what we call as hyperparameters. Whichever we could able to change is what we call as hyperparameter. Will change, and finally you will do this process again and again until it comes out of the output. But deep learning is not like so. Deep learning algorithm, let's say in machine learning we have neural network, right? Here we call it as perceptron. The same idea, it gets extended involving multiple layers, and it gets extended to CNN. First initial basic neural network model, we call it as CNN. So what CNN is doing, or deep learning algorithm will do, it will try to extract the information to the core possible. Okay, with as such, the user need not to worry about how is it being processed, what features is it identifying, nothing it needs to identify. And hence this deep learning is a core which is sitting inside, which means it is also working by with the use of machine learning algorithm. It's not anything separate. So here we'll be talking only about the number of layers, okay, and the number of nodes in each and every layer, that's all. So with that, so it is you can very much compare it to a machine where we actually have written how many cycles it needs to run inside to give the proper output, right? So having understood the relationship between AI, ML and DL, AL KI cannot sit separate. It's actually a wrapper which we'll be using on top of this ML and DL algorithms. And these and all what we have discussed, I hope with just an introduction we can move on. So actually, with the difference between traditional programming and machine learning, in traditional programming we give the program as input and the program and the data as input. So this is the program and this is my input. Okay, so this input will be executed on this program and you will be getting the output. But any number of times, whatever be the input you give, only this program will execute and you have a standard execution scenario and you'll be getting an output, right? But in machine learning, we used to give your input and the output I got as your input, the data, which is called as the raw data, which is nothing but the input actually, and the output, okay, which is nothing but the response variable. Both the things of any number of things. It is more or less like in our soft skill exam, we used to be given with series, right? Arithmetic series or additional series or anything. So that you can give. And based on the assumption, see, normally what we do, we'll try to find the relationship between one number and the next number and we'll try to come out with the output, right? Similar way, machine is trying to do so. But the human beings has the intelligence to do, but machines has to be given that intelligence. So there comes the necessity of machine learning algorithms. So those machine learning algorithm will try to identify the relationship between these set of inputs and the output, and finally it will come out with a program, not exactly the program of this kind. I am just using it for a reference, but it will come out something of this kind. It may be an equation, it may be the parameters or anything. So in that way, so actually here data and output is the input and the program is supposed to be the output. This is the major difference we could explain for that. And we saw yesterday itself task, experience and performance. And we will come back to this, when to use machine learning and when not to use. It's the important concept that we need to, not in every case. If you say that I have 1000 data, or 1000 temperature which is there in Celsius and I need to convert it to Fahrenheit, can I use machine learning? Of course not, right? So we have to specifically understand where to use machine learning and where you should not. Suppose if a task cannot be done by a human expertise, yes, you can use machine learning, right? So you have 1 lakh, 2 lakh amount of data and you don't have a statistical formula, and you have to, every row you have to look in, identifying the relationship, and if you want to come out, actually human expertise is not at all possible for that, and hence you can go for machine learning, a task that will consume exhaustive human expertise. Actually, even for statistical formula, if you feel like it will consume exhaustive human expertise, and which is much more important than any machine. So we can nowadays the computational power and the storage is available in massive form and in the cheapest rate. So you can afford using it. So the people are able to afford using the machine rather than the human expertise. There we can go. A task that cannot be explained by human expertise. This is more important, right? Sometimes given a data set, we may not be able to clearly explain why we arrive at this output to the human being, in which case you can go for why this comes. When the situation comes is like, if you don't have a fixed formula stating that this is how I arrived at that. Okay, normally let's say you are giving an assignment to all your students and they are submitting. Okay, so normal for one student we may give 9 marks, one student we may give 8 marks. Why? Possibly we may not have an proper answer for that, but it depends on the type, so many parameters like the handwriting that he has given, the concept, and the understanding about so many things. Likewise, if there is one such scenario, you can go for using machine learning. Task needs to be adaptive to different entities. Yes, this is very important. Yesterday, we were talking about that smartness, dynamic website and all. So, wherein case, if you want the task to be very different to every user, let's say you go to Flipkart, you go to any clothing shop. When you're a man, you're given with that kind of data. When you're a female, you're given with that kind of data. Possibly for female also, depending on my history or track, okay, of whatever I have purchased. So you are given with one, or I am given with one different front end, and you are given with one another application or the front end. So when you want to be more adaptive to different entities, of course a statistical formula or a human expertise is not at all possible, and hence we should go for machine learning. Tasks that based on very large data, of course this is the normal thing that we all know. Okay, so when there is a very large data set where you cannot actually find out how it works, then you can go for machine learning usage. Right. Now coming to the different algorithms that machine learning have. Actually, basically this machine learning can be categorized into these two basic algorithms sets. One we call it as supervised learning, another one we call it as unsupervised. In a way, so we will see what is supervised and what is unsupervised with this diagram. Okay, so now if this is the diagram you are given with, okay, by looking at the diagram itself, we are comfortable that there is a group which is having red in color, there is a group which is wearing blue in color, and there is a group which is wearing yellow in color, right? Now, if these the experience, or if the data of these data set is being stored, what could be the output? You can either use the color of this, or you can use the department that they work in as the output, right? So if this is a case, okay, we say that is wherein you have input. Suppose you have n number of attributes of these people you are storing. For example, you have the ID of this employee, okay, and the name of this employee, the salary they are getting, okay, and what is the criticality of the section, everything. And finally, if you say what is the department they work on, the department may be the output. Now in the for the next day, if I'm saying that this is the thing and this is the color, or else if I say the department in which working, you may take color as the output. Okay, so the finally what happens, these five becomes your input elements, and finally this is going to be a response variable or your output variable, right? So if you are given with a data set of this kind, okay, what are the possible operations that you can do? Assume that these are people working in a company, and the department in which they are working on, depending on that, they are given with the uniform. Assume in a fact that. So what are the possible operations? Yeah, so something I have listed out. You just check whether it is correct or not. We can calculate the average weight of all the people in the group. Okay, these are all some assumptions I took in this slide, but you can have your own different strategies. So one is I can calculate the average weight of all the people in the group. Okay, for some reason or other, I can calculate their average salary, right? So based on the people who are working in the department, and I can calculate the average salary, right? Designate them using the color of shirt they wear. If they are wearing red color, we may say it is from an electrical department. If they are having blue color, they may be from a housekeeping department, right? When there is this kind of thing, they may be from a HR department. Likewise, you can designate, right? And otherwise, on the other case, what can you do? You can designate them with the department they work on. This is with the color of, this is with the department. Another thing is, if a person is in electrical department, we can say they should wear red color shirt. Likewise, we can do. But anyway, all needs to have an output column, right? All depends on the color of the shirt that they wear. So now, if you look at what is the kind of output that we will get here, it will be a number, numeric, right? Here in average salary, again, it will be a number. Here in these two cases, if you like, if you see, it is like a categorical vary. Yesterday we were talking about this categorical value. So here designate using the color of shirt they wear. What are the possibilities? You can have red, you can have blue, and you can have yellow. right? So you can have yellow. So these are the three possibilities that you can have. Designate them with the department you work on. Again, we have electrical, HR, and housekeeping, right? So accordingly, the supervised learning algorithm can be categorized into regression and classification, right? If you want to have number as your output, continuous value as your output, okay, we say the concept belongs to regression. Then if you have discrete value as your output, right, this discrete values can even be number, okay, or in it could be a text like value, text value, then in which case we say it is a classification. Okay, so I think you might be clear with supervised learning. Then coming to the next kind of algorithm, suppose you are given with the set of people watching a football match now, okay, and I'm given with this diagram. That's it. I don't know what it is. So, what are the possible activities you can do with this data set? Okay, so there are some possible operations. So only thing is this is a data set. That's all. I never know what these people belong to. They are from a multiple domain, multiple region, and all those stuff. But only common thing is they are watching a football match. I want to infer some information from this group. Okay, what is the only possibility that you can do? You can group this data among themselves, right? I can segregate the group of this kind, but if you abruptly segregate like this, then it's of no use. So the segregation should be on some perspective. So on what perspective can we do? You can match the color of the shirt that people wear, and you can say that they are from a particular family. You can calculate how many number of female are there, how many number of male are there. You can identify the height of the people, okay, based on which you can plan for arranging the seats, and you can identify the age group of the people so that you can calculate which age group is the maximum what to say, the viewer of the football match. Okay, likewise, but anything what you do, it is only the group is grouping, or in technical terms we call it as clustering. So given an unsupervised data, what is unsupervised? Only the input we know, we don't have a specified output. Okay, all that we have is the inputs, that's all. That is unsupervised learning. So the only possibility is that we can't do anything else. The only thing is you can group, or based on what? That is the age, height, color, or sex, right? So now, having understood the different algorithms that you have, now we'll look at what are the some of the sample algorithms you have. One is supervised. Supervised, we have linear regression. Okay, so and you have decision tree, naive Bayes, perceptron, and you have support vector machine. Lot many are there. I am listing the most common methodologies that people use daily. And coming to unsupervised, you have k-means, k-mode, and k-median. Because since we know that it is only grouping or clustering, just what we can do is to find the center point based on which you can group the nearby points. So yesterday we have seen the central tendency aspects. So only to that central tendency aspect you can group, and that's what is k-means, k-mode, and k-median. And coming to the third class of algorithms called ensemble learning. So this ensemble learning is a kind of hybrid algorithm between supervised and unsupervised algorithm. So the supervised and unsupervised stand separate. Actually, the concept of supervised is different, unsupervised is different. By taking advantage of both the things, if you want to come out with a new algorithm, I hope this ensemble learning is the concept. There are some algorithms like random forest, AdaBoost, and XGBoost. Anandi ma'am, hello.
Hello, சொல்லுங்க ma'am.
Ma'am,
Yes, ma'am.
one minute, just 1 minute. I'll come back.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, yes, sure. I'll check it. Okay.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. You're
Yeah,
able
yeah,
to hear
I've
you, ma'am.
joined. Yeah, yeah. One
Yes,
urgent
thank
call.
you.
Sorry.
Yes, please
Okay.
continue. Thank you.
So this is these are the different ensemble algorithm. Actually, these necessarily not to be a combination of supervised and unsupervised. Either at least one algorithm, if you want to combine in different ways as you like, we have that also is called as an ensemble. Basically, it is to take advantage of multiple outputs that is coming from different subsets. Yesterday we are talking about population and sample. If you have multiple samples of a population, depending on the output that we get from each sample, what are you trying to convey? How are you going to what to say? Add up all those results becomes the ensemble learning. So we have random forest. If you look at the name itself tells you random forest is nothing but forest will have number of trees. So it is nothing but combination of multiple decision trees. So in a data set, if you have lakhs of rows, okay, so you can divide it into 10 different data sets, sub data sets, what we call it as your sample, and for each and every data set you can create a decision tree, and whatever output that comes out of each decision tree can be combined and you can predict the result. That is what is random forest. Similarly, AdaBoost and XGBoost are algorithms used to boost your output. Let's say you have a clustering algorithm, or you have a prediction classification algorithm. Okay, if 10 are giving wrong output and 15 are giving right output, the data from which wrong output is coming can be boosted. Normally boost when will we use? In order to boost up our energy, when we feel like our energy goes down. The same concept is applied here. If we feel like the output of some data sets are not proper, some sample sets are not proper, only the hyperparameter of those sample sets will be boosted and you'll be corrected with the output. So these are that kind of algorithms that we have in our practice. Okay, and in short, what is the actual modeling process that we do have? So we are collecting data from real world entities. These real world entities include whatever. It might be a human being, it might be a sensor on the roadside, it may be anything and everything, right? So whatever we do have now, even if now I'm talking, this could be used as a streaming media. This is also a information that is added on to the real world. So any real world entity is able to generate data. These data, first, when you are collecting these data, you cannot use any data as such, right? So these data has to be pre-processed to make it proper for machine learning model. So there are different pre-processing algorithms. Start from integrating these things into an Excel sheet and performing different pre-processing algorithm. We have to first do that and check whether it contains any unwanted features, right? So let us assume that the task is to compute how much the student will get in his first semester. How much is CGPA the student may earn in the first semester after he enrolled into our university or any college. Okay, so on what basis do we do? Based on the profile that we have for them. Let's say you have his name, say a roll number, name, okay, and the address, state from which he is, and n number of things, including 10th mark, 12th mark. Okay, so the 10th mark and 12th mark may contribute to the CGPA, what we are trying to predict, but not to the name and the serial number of the person, right? So such features we can drop whenever we are going for implementation. So that's what is the next step we normally do. Okay, so the concept actually technically it is called as dimensionality reduction. So dimensions is the number of features or the number of columns that we do have on the data set. So that is being performed. There are a lot of techniques out there. So if you feel like all the data are important, you can just go for training using the selected model. So training, you can select the best algorithm depending on, see, first you have to understand whether the data set is a supervised data set or an unsupervised data set. How do we know? It is by using the output column. Once identified that, having identified with that, then we'll select the corresponding algorithm. Then again, there are a lot of techniques. First, we have to understand the linearity. Okay, so whether it comes under linear model or non-linear model. So accordingly, you can choose the algorithm. And once this is done, it's not enough to give the trained model alone. The model has to be tested by using the sample things. Like normally we test no everywhere when we write a program. If you are asked to write a program to compute two numbers, we won't stop with writing the program. Rather, we will give sample input and test whether the output or not. So how do we check? We will test for the inputs for which we know the output. Right. So I'll give 5 and 6 as my input, and because I know that 11 should be my output. In a similar case, you have to testing is different. See, testing is you have to give the input for which you already know the output, so that we can verify the more trained model gives you the proper output. Once it is training is done and testing is done, you have to analyze the results, and you have to find out whether the results that is given by the model is enough for you to implement. Because here in machine learning, we are not talking about accurate result, rather it is an optimized result. So since optimization is the only strategy, we will end up with errors whether you are able to accept that errors or not. Because let's say if 100 equipments are being delivered on a proper day, people know that one or two is faulty, but how many becomes faulty is the important situation. So that threshold we have to understand, and that is what is the case here. Analyze results. Right. So having understood this, I'll just quickly show some of the slides on this is how a data set will look like. So this is a forest fire data set downloaded from UCI repository. So when you open it, you will have this thing. So where the A, B, C, the columns X, Y, month, day, FFMC, everything we call it as the features, right? And this one, each and every row, this entire row is experience 1, this entire row is experience 2, and it goes. So this is how a data set will look like. And you can download the data sets from different providers, if the best being UCI repository. And the next thing is Kaggle.com. This Kaggle is actually a competition environment. You can even participate in the competition, and you can go for earning credits also. So, but these are not only the data set providers. You have a lot. We have listed out all the possible data sets. It is there in my blog. If you want, you can verify. But the most common data sets whichever is being given, if you have a data set which you have collected for your research, and if you want to contribute to the society, you can load it to UCI or Kaggle, and that can be used by all other people. So that's the source from where you can use. So now once you have the data set, how do you open this Jupyter notebook? There are different ways to have your data set. First, you can construct your own data set. Yesterday, we have seen in NumPy the way to construct arrays. Okay, so arrays, if you construct, that is nothing but a data set. So you can construct your own data set, or else you can download a data set from an open source repository. Any open source repository, you can store it onto your system, and you can open it using pandas.opencsv. Or if you feel like the data set is trending daily, right, and the data are getting added on daily, some of the data set, let's COVID-19 if you take, it's not that it is a fixed data set daily. Even now, if you take, there will be a change in the yesterday's data set. So in which case you can directly open a data set from the URL and use it from your Jupyter notebook. Or yesterday when we are talking about Google Colab, so you can download load a data set into Google Colab, and you can start using it. Those are the different ways with which you can use with your data sets, right? Now how to split this into training and testing. So normally the standard rule is 80% of whatever data we have will go for training, and 20% we go for testing. But it's not mandatory. You can start with 50-50 and really move on to understand how your data sets behave, or how the performance gets improved on addition of number of experiences. But the standard convention is the 80-20 rule. 80% of the data you can go for training, and 20 you can go for testing. But that should be in a very random case. You cannot really have first 80% of data for training and next to 20% for testing. So this Python interpreter will automatically do the randomness for you. And the other cases, if you don't want to do it randomly, and in case if you want to be very specific on selection, you can go for slicing concept use with NumPy and Pandas. Yesterday we were talking about that, no? One matrix, okay, how to segregate or slice the data. Using that you can do, right? And coming to the pre-processing, now that we are talking about how you are going to retrieve the data set. Next is the pre-processing activity, the first being missing value analysis. This is more important because the real-time data what we collect is not actually full, right? Every time it may change. That is, and there may be some data. Let's say if you are gathering the data of your, we say as property, you may say as your what to say, I don't know, any student data. If you collect, somebody may give state, somebody may give 10th mark, somebody may say they don't remember. Okay, some of the data may present and some of the data may not present. Those data we call it as null data, not a number. Okay, it's not equal to 0. You have to understand, because 0 is different. 0 is a value, but NaN is not. It means it shows the emptiness. Okay, so when you are asking about, when you are asked to give the feedback about my lecture, sometimes if you don't want to give, what will you say? You don't, you sometimes you may be in a position that I don't want to give true, sorry, good, I don't want to give bad also. What, how could I give? I couldn't find out anything to give. So what will we do? We'll just leave that, okay, as a null. That is what we call it as NaN. So in Python we have a special number called not a number, which exists to show that it is null. So all the things, so we have to check whether null values remain in the data set. If it is so, you have to fill it with 0, because all our numerical statistical operation we are going to do, and hence it's not possible to proceed with NaN numbers. So you can fill the value NaN values with anything, like for example the 0, 1, any specific number, or you can use mean or mode or median of the data set, or you can have an average based on class. That is, you can group and then take an average, and you can use all these things, or depending on your flexibility and the domain of interest for which you are working on. Then the second important pre-processing activity is normalization. This also we have slightly seen yesterday. Actually, for better analysis and visualization, we are going for this normalization. As we have seen, so some of the data set may be in 100, somebody may be in 1000, somebody may be in 0 point. But in order to bring into a common that is range, we go for this normalization. Basically, we use min-max normalization, but anything like Z normalization or a plain normalization also you can use. So it's not anything much more, because anyway when you are normalizing, the characteristic that exist in the original data set will never change. So and hence you can go for using normalization. Then having these two are the basic pre-processing activity. So now, if you have understood that supervised learning is the concept that you are going to use on the data set, how do we know? If you have input attribute as well as the output attribute. Output is what is a dependent column, right? So this output is nothing but a dependent column on the input. This output should be computable from the input. If such the case, we say it comes under supervised learning environment. So we need to understand whether the data set is linear or not. Okay, what is linearity? So polynomial of degree 1. When you want to come out with an equation of that, we say if the polynomial is of degree 1, we say it is linear. Okay, in which case dy by dx will always be a constant. Okay, so for example, if you are drawing a graph like this, and if whatever you want to do is following a straight line, okay, so this is dy, change in y direction, right? And this is change in x direction. This should always be a constant in whatever point you take. Okay, so if we feel like this is always a constant, we say that it is linear, and it can be more easily adaptable in machine learning algorithm. But in case if your polynomial degree is of greater than 1, okay, let's say you have a data set which when you plot, if it comes like this, okay, so how to do? Okay, it's not possible to do it with linear. You can do, but the error rate will be very high. in which case dy by dx will not be equal to be constant and maybe exponential or logarithmic. Okay, so you take this point, the dy by dx is equal to 0, but if you take this point it will be much more. So at any point of time this will not be a constant, and hence we assume that it is the degree of polynomial is greater than 1, and hence you have to go for non-linear machine learning strategies like svm. Svm is in linear regression also we have that, but normally we won't use, you'll go for svm kind of things. Okay, and yeah, how to check this linearity now? Okay, there are two methodologies. Visually you can check this scatter plot. Scatter plot is the best means to check. So you draw the scatter plot. Okay, so if you feel like your data are surrounding like this, okay, you can optimally draw a straight line of this kind. You know, this is not an exact straight line, I'm just drawing. But in which case if you have this kind, okay, if your data are scattered like this, okay, it's not at all possible to draw a line which can mostly accommodate all the points on space. So that's how you can check, use scatter plot to check whether the data set is linear or not. Then yesterday we have talked about the correlation, right? So if the data set is correlated, you can have values between plus or minus 0.72 plus or like positive should be mapped with positive and negative should be mapped with negative. So minus 1 to minus 0.7. If the values remain, we say there exists a negative correlation and hence it is linear. Similarly, plus 1 to plus 0.7, if we say it is positive correlation and hence you can go for linearity. Right. How to do that? How can we see? We have pie plots or scene board to draw the scatter chart. Correlation calculation, yesterday we have seen using the pandas, and the heat maps can be used for visually identifying the correlation value. Okay, so if you have numbers as your output, again we have two methodologies, simple linear regression and multiple linear regression, and the metrics that is used as for assessment of performance are accuracy and then the loss, right? That's what we are going to see now. I'll just explain with this diagram, right? So linear regression, it's very simple, what we actually have for in our day-to-day life. So actually here it is like I have drawn a scatter plot stating the placements percentage year-wise from 2000 to 2018, right? So it starts with 50% and by 2018 it was like 96% as of now, right? So this is a scatter plot. By looking at the scatter plot itself, it's very easy to understand the fact that we can able to draw a straight line. Okay, so mapping most of the points on space. Now what is an error? Actually if you look at this point, we need this value, but when you do it using a straight line, this is the value we got. So the difference between these two, what is the difference? This difference, right? Y difference is what we call it as error. So what is this distance? Since it is a straight line, we understand that y is equal to mx plus c is the straight line equation, where m is the slope and c is the intercept. What is an intercept? The deviation from the origin is what we call as your intercept. Okay, that is in general in machine learning term we call this as the bias. Okay, what is a bias? It is the common difference that we found in the data set. Okay, so if we see that 50 is the difference that I found on all the data, that is your bias or the intercept. M we have to calculate by calculating dy by dx. At every point, what is dy by dx we have to calculate, and that is what we call it as your slope, which is M. Okay. So now these are two different lines. See, for the same data set, you can draw lines from this, but if you slightly tilt the line, okay, all the error rates will go down, because I'll show you this. You can see there exists a lot of error rates. Okay, all the points are not correctly mapped. Only how many points? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 points are on the line. Okay, so if you slightly change it, now the error rates gets reduced. Okay, so I'm just tilting the line by varying the intercept as well as your slope. So the linear regression algorithm works on this principle, trying to draw a straight line that fits most of the points, not only fitting, by reducing your error. Okay, how to reduce that error? We have two basic methodologies. One is least squared method and another one is gradient descent method. So least squared method is what is inbuilt onto any platform which you see. I'll just go through, give you a small introduction about that. I'm not going more technically. Actually, we are drawing a line yi is equal to mxi plus c, where I is the point on space. Okay, how many ever points we have, that is what is xi and yi. How to calculate the error? Okay, how do we calculate the error? If you look at this point, okay, this is actually the yi, okay, actual yi, but how much is calculated this point? Okay, the difference between these two, y predicted minus actual value, becomes your error. We take advantage of that. So yi and capital yi is the actual output, capital yi is the calculated output. We are squaring it. Why do we square? Because actual may be lesser than predicted, actual may be greater than predicted. In whatever be the case, error is an error. Okay, we don't bother about the signature and sorry sign, and hence we are squaring it in order to move out of the problem of the sign. Now we do this for all the points that we do have on the space, sum it up, and that is the total error that pertains in this equation, right? I just have expanded. How do we calculate this predicted value? It is by using mxi plus c, right? Now what is our intention? We have to bring down this error to 0. So dou e partial, it has two parameters, right? M is one parameter, c is another parameter, but yi and xi are defined static constants. Why constants? Actually you are giving the data set, right? So for this x, this is the value we are giving the data set to the system, we are giving some points, so it is all constants. So we can't differentiate with respect to constant, rather we have to differentiate with respect to the variables. What is a variable? M and c, which is computed from this data set. Again, you may think it is all numeral one only. Why is it a variable? Yes, it is a variable because that is computed using some equation, right? So our intention is to bring this error rate to 0, in which case dou e has to be partially derived with respect to m and with respect to 0 c, and to be equated to 0. Okay, if you do like so, then automatically this is the equation that we'll end up with. Okay, I'm not elaborating, but that is the concept. If you partially differentiate that equation with respect to m and c, you will end up with this equation, which is the equation that system is using in order to arrive at the value of m and c. Okay, suppose you have two. This is for simple linear regression where you have only one input and one output. Suppose you have two inputs, okay, x1 and x2. That's where multiple linear regression comes in. So what is the equation? Again, it remains the same. Yi is equal to m1 x1 m2 x2 plus c. So which is the weightage of the first. Here the combination of these two becomes your slope, wherein these becomes the weightage of the input parameters. Let's say you have 10th mark student class, 10th mark of a student, you have 12th mark of a student, and you are trying to predict the first year CGPA. Okay, now the impact of 10th mark on this will be slightly lower than the impact of this on this. So that's what is the weightage that we give. So that is calculated. Again, the same concept. Okay, so now the concept is you have to partially derive it with respect to m1, m2, as well as the bias or the intercept, which is c. Okay, and you will end up with the errors. That is what we call it as your least square method. Okay, gradient descent is a separate methodology. That is by using learning rate. I have a video on my channel. If you want elaborate on that, you can have a look at it. Now, what are the different metrics that we use for linear regression? That's the next concept. So we have mean absolute error. Absolute error, we know this is actual value, this is predicted value. Just you subtract, and that is your mean absolute error. But this has the problem of sign, right? When you sum up, when one is having -5 as the error, another one is having +5 as the error, this will cancel. Okay, but in actual case, both needs to be and that's taken for consideration. Both are errors, so we go for mean squared error. Okay, so we square it and then take up the sum, and you take the average, that is mean squared error. Okay, but this the output of this will be slightly more because we are squaring and taking that into consideration, and hence we take the square root and we go for root mean square error. Okay, any of this could be used as a metric for linear regression. So I hope we can switch back and go for one implementation and then come back. Yeah, is my screen visible? Ma'am, can you see the Jupyter notebook?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Now, the same process which we have discussed on the theory, now I'm showing you on the screen. Right, so this is, yeah, I just have imported all the libraries that we need. Yesterday, we were talking about NumPy, Pandas, Seaborn, and this sklearn is the package in which all the machine learning algorithms are implemented, and you can use it just as a method. That's all. Okay, sklearn has linear underscore model, which is having both linear regression as well as logistic regression. Both comes under linear modeling technique, and in order to calculate the different metrics or use the different metrics, we have a package called metrics that you can use. And matplot library has pyplot. Actually, this Seaborn is built on top of pyplot, and hence it is available as a separate package. So pyplot is a package available for just plotting the graphs. Both are one and the same. Seaborn is just advanced. Why I'm using matplotlib inline is that I want the diagrams to be printed by the next of the implementation itself. So when I'm running, I want the graph to be printed there. That I don't want to be imported, so that's why I have given inline. Okay. Now I have used one forest fire data set which I have downloaded, and that is what yesterday we were talking about shape, which will tell you the number of rows as well as the number of column. It has 13 features and 517 rows, and the information what we have printed. If you print info, you can see these are the column names, and these are whether it is null or non-null. Okay, and how many are there? What is the data type that it has? You could see int 64, float 64, and the third parameter is object. Object is nothing but the strings that are there presenting in your data set. And the third we have used is df.head to display the first 5 rows. Okay, if you want to print 10 rows, you can very well give the number of rows that you want to print. You will print the 10 rows. Right now, here I am going to draw the histogram. Actually, what I'm printing is I need to understand what is the minimum value of the feature area. Area is my last parameter, right? So that is what is going to be the, because if you look at all the 13 attributes, area I hope is the calculated output. Okay, and hence all the things will be considered as an input. Area is what I'm going to calculate as the output. Now, print of df of area dot min of, in order to find what is the minimum value and what is the maximum value of the corresponding column. So the column names has to be given like this, as usual, like how we display in normal arrays. Df of the row column name you can give, and you can use any of the functions, scalar functions. Now we are drawing a histogram. See, it's very easy. plt.hist, that's all. For this area is what we need to give. So that's all. Your values are ranging from 0 to 1094, you see. You could see a slight blue color over here, which means all your data are skewed near to this minimum value. Yesterday we were talking about the skewness, right? If you look at this histogram itself, you could see most of the values are skewed near, almost 500 values are skewed near this 0, that is near to the minimum, and only 17 values are ahead of this minimum value. That's what is the representation that you can infer from this histogram. So now we are drawing a pair plot. So between the two variables RH and wind, by considering hue as the day. What is a hue? On what basis you want to visualize these two parameters? That is what we call it as hue. Okay, so you could see this is a scatter plot and this is a histogram by default. You can see whether it is normal or not by using the graph itself. Almost it is near to normal. So now, if you see the information about what are the two different columns that has object values, it is month and day. So in order to go for linear regression, it's not possible with an object, and hence you need to convert it into numeral value. So how to convert? That is by using this replace operation, df dot month. the column name, which is month, and what is the operation I'm going to do on month? Replace. What to replace? January, February till December with the values 1, 2, and so on up to 12. So you should definitely give in place is equal to true. It means that this that is replacement will happen on the same data set. Okay, so it is like A is equal to A plus 1. So we are doing some operation and replacing the same value. So that is in place is equal to do. Again, the same day, Monday to Sunday, we are changing it to 1 to 7. Okay, so after performing that, if you print, you can see the month and day gets converted into number formats. Okay, now this par grid, if you see, it is symmetric, right? So the whatever we see on the upper part of the graph, the same is reflected on the lower part of this graphs also. So what you can do, you can use two different graphs. So this graph can be divided into three areas, one on the upper half, another on the lower half, and other on the diagonal. So on diagonal, I have plotted a histogram. On the lower part, I have dotted a line plot, and the upper part we have plotted a scatter plot. Okay. Now you could see whether this scatter plot is correlated or not, positively correlated. This is positive correlation, right? From this top bottom left to top right, it is going on. It is near linear. That's all. We can't say that it is perfectly linear because you have a lot of distributions outside of it. So okay, we can consider. That's what is the assumption you can get. Again, like yesterday, we have calculated the correlation. So correlation values we are mapping onto using the heat map. Okay, so you don't need to bother about this usage of heat map as such. You can use one or two features also, and you can print the heat map for that. And now I am checking whether it is null or not. So if you see, df dot is null of dot sum. Sum will tell how many number of such null values are there. Actually, there are no null values, and hence it is all 0. Now I am going to apply null value. Okay, so in order for you to demonstrate, I'm just applying a null value of my own. See, what I have done is np of x column, first column, right? Dot apply of, I'm using a lambda operation. Lambda operation, you can assume it like a macro, which you have. It's just a macro, okay? So, if x is equal to 1, if the value of x is equal to 1, I'm going to use np dot nan, which means I'm going to make it null. Else, I'm going to retain the same value as it is. Okay, and I'm printing how many number of such values we have changed. Okay, so that's what we have done. Now if you see, x has no null values because we are replacing the value of y, not x. Okay, so the column y we are going to change based on the column value x. So you could see the value of x is 1. What is the value of y? It is nan. So how many such values we have replaced? It is 48. Okay, this is like imputing null values and checking whether that works correct or not. Okay, now I am going to fill those values by using the target value. Okay, now what we did, target is equal to df of y dot mean of. I'm going to calculate the mean of the y value and I'm going to print it. So what is the mean value? It is 5.044 something. Okay, so yeah, the dot fill na is used to fill the n values. How to fill? We are going to fill it with the mean value. Okay, so the mean value is 5 point something, and all those we are filling, all the nan values we are filling up with the 5.01 value, and in place is equal to true means that the df will automatically gets updated with the actual value. Now if you print df dot is null or dot sum of y is equal to 0, because all 48 values will get filled with this mean. Okay, now this in order to identify what are the headers you have, what is the name of the columns you have, df dot columns. Then now comes for input and output splitting. We already have seen that the data set needs to be splitted for training and testing, right? Before that, you have to divide the data set into input data set as well as your output data set. So if you look at the forest fire, we actually have 13 columns, right? Indexed from 0 to 12. So what we did is trained underscore x, training underscore x. X means your input, y means your output. So the training data set will have values from that is you can understand these two parameters. So colon represents all rows. Okay, if you want to slice only few rows, you have to give here, or else if you press just give colon, it means all rows. What are the columns we need to include? It is all from 0 to 11, not including 12, and hence we have given 0 to 12. In Python, not the last value will always not be included, and hence. Now, what is the output, training output? DF2 of all rows with only the last column. What is the index of last column? It is 12. Totally, we have 13 columns, so index is from 0 to 12. That's it. So now I'm printing. Okay, 1 minute. I'll execute. One minute, I'm just running all my kernels back. Yeah. Okay. So now that I'm printing train x dot shape and train y dot shape, you can see 517 rows followed by 12 columns is the size of your input data. 517 rows followed by one column. One will not be specified. It's just a single vector. Okay, having your output, right? Then we go for, so we have filled up the missing values. We have divided it into training and testing. We go for normalization, right? sklearn has a package called pre-processing, which has min-max scalar as the normalization parameter. Just we are using it. Okay, all the data, whichever is in different formats, gets converted into the values between 0 to 1. So that is the normalization that we apply. Having done so, the next now the next duty is to now the next duty is to okay. So our next duty is to fit a line passing through most of the parameters. You see, this regress is the object of your linear model. Okay, so what we did here is, you can see here, regress is equal to linear model dot linear regression of. Linear model is the sub package of sklearn, which is having a method called linear regression of. This is used for both simple linear regression as multiple linear regression. So this regress has a method called fit. Okay, so what input and output it needs to fit a line. Y is equal to mx plus c. What is y? That is this train y. What is x? It is mean with your train x. It's multiple linear regression because you have more than one input column, right? So now it will automatically give you two outputs. One is the list of coefficients. So what is the line we get? It is y is equal to mx1 plus mx2 plus mx3 and so on. Those coefficients it has given you as output. How many columns do we have? It is 12 columns. So 12 different coefficients you will get. The intercept is nothing but the bias. Okay, minus 9 point something is the intercept. Okay, so now that we have fitted a line that passed through most of the data, now we are going for prediction. How to predict. Now, I'm not going to divide this data set into 80-20 using 80-20 rule. You can divide, but what I have done is, since the data is only 517 rows, I'm just using the same 517 rows for training and same 517 rows for testing. It's not mandatory. I have just done like that. So now regress dot predict of. Initially we used fit to fit a line. Now predict to predict the output, right? So predict of, for which values we need to predict? For the input values. 517 input rows having 12 columns that we are passing. The output predicted value is stored in y underscore predicted. Okay. Now I have just printed the same. Okay. You could see here actually what the predicted values. 0 is my actual output, but our model has predicted 5.66. Then for next 0, we have predicted 11.8. Okay, so likewise the output goes on. You could see for 2 it is predicting 18.24, and we actually have found that the model is not properly suiting for linear regression, right? But anyway, it's just for a demonstration. You could see here, okay, visually you can represent. So with 2x inputs and as the area, which is nothing but our output, this is the actual value, this is the predicted value. Sorry, I have drawn on the reverse side. This is the actual value and this is the predicted value. And by diagrammatically, we can see that the actual and the predicted is not proper, okay, and hence the model is not suiting this. That the same can be ascertained by using this error. Mean absolute error, mean squared error, root mean squared error. Okay, all the thing, if you see, root mean squared error is 62.8, which is not at all perfect. Okay, but this is the flow of how we have to work with the linear regression. I'll show you with the real-time data set of what we have done. Actually, we have a data set which we worked with one of our mechanical professor. Actually, it's a solar pod, same procedure. I'll just go through in a minute. So it is a solar pond data set wherein we have calculated incident radiation, inlet water temperature, temperature of lower convective zone, and ambient temperature. This outlet temperature of the pond will be the output, right? Now, the same what we did, we have drawn a scatter plot. Now you look at this diagram, you could feel the difference. Actually, this is more linear than what we have seen earlier, right? So we could draw a straight line which can most probably go through most of the points with reduced error rates, right? Now, this is the correlation value. This correlation itself, you can understand. Well, what is the maximum value? It is 1. What is the lowest value? It is 0.8. So, the value lies between 0.7 to 1, which means there exists a perfect positive correlation, and hence this model should suit well. Okay, I'll just show you the output and the error of this. Possibly we can understand. One minute, let me open P2. Just a minute, it is executing. Yeah, we have 25 cross 4 and the fourth column alone as my output. We are doing normalization. You could see the values range from 0 to here, and I'm executing. So since we have only 4 columns, incident temperature, the ambient temperature, your lower convective zone temperature, and one more, and the output intercept is going to be 28. Okay, I'm just printing. You could see now here. Use check. Yeah, 28 is my actual input and 28.08 is our predicted input. It is more or less same. See 28, 28.3, 28, 28.7. See, all those things are more or less one and the same. Actually, when you plot, you can see the same plotting I'm using. You could see the difference. This is the actual plotting. This is the predicted plotting. You could see most of the values are one and the same. Okay, and hence the model fits properly. When you use metric, see, you could see What is the error method? We have 0.17. So this particular data set suits well for your linear algorithm. That is the way that we can understand whether our algorithm suits well or not. Okay. So with that, quickly we'll move on for clustering. I'll show one algorithm on clustering and its implementation. So clustering, we say, suppose we have a set of workers, right? So this is a case which we normally used to see in our what to say in TV and all. These are the migrant workers who have accumulated, asking the government to send them back. Now with this, the government wants to send them back. How do they send? How do they know which part they come from? How are they setting? Now what to do? The solution is to send them back to your native, but the question is how to send. How do we know? Suppose if the task is given to us to segregate, okay, based on the destination to which they have to give, that is the only possibility, right? Grouping is the only possibility. How do we go for grouping? That's the next question. Right. On what basis do you go for grouping? You can group based on the age. Age, why I'm telling? Because the most senior people may want to be sent out first, assuming that the younger people may have the ability to withstand. Okay, the severity of their condition. Okay, so suppose if a person is able to withstand in the correct place for some days, you can retain them, or based on the severity of the destination. Let's say if you want to go back to Maharashtra, it's a crucial situation, you may not want. So, and many more. You can see these are different ways in which the government can decide whether to send them back to the destination or not. So what to do? So anyway, we are in need of a data set of this kind, right? The person's ID, his age, severity, destination, all the details we need to collect, and it has to be stored on an Excel sheet. Once that is done, you can group. Okay, so based on what? Most closely integrated attribute. What is the most closely integrated attribute? That's what we have discussed earlier. You can group on age, you can group on the destination, you can group on the availability of money with them. Any different parameter you can do, right? So but on whatever be the grouping you do, okay, what is our objective? Our objective is to group, that is create a cluster in such a way that variation within the clusters has to be very low. Okay, so a group, if you say it is a group, there should be a strong bonding within the group, and the variation within the cluster has to be very low. So intra-cluster similarity has to be very high, intra-cluster difference has to be very low, but variation between cluster, between the groups, it has to be very high. Okay, inter-cluster similarity has to be very low, whereas intercluster difference has to be very high. So that's what is the final achievement that we should get. Now, how to find out the similarity of the people? It is by using the distance formula, because all are going to get plotted on space. What is the only possibility to identify we could apply some distance formula and find the difference between one and the other. So we have different distance formula. Euclidean distance, Manhattan distance are the commonly used distance measures that we have. Okay, so this is the generalized distance formula, Minkowski distance. Actually, if you substitute the value of p to 1, okay, we will get Manhattan distance. P, if you substitute 1, so it will become xi minus x. You take the absolute value, sum it up. For all the points, you will get Manhattan distance. If you substitute the value of p to 2, you will get Euclidean distance, right? Square root of the value of p will become 2, and that will be your Euclidean distance. So for nominal values, let's say if you have categorical values, how to do? It is by using just similarity. When the value is male and the other value is male, we say one and the same. If both values are different, we say it is different. So that is the similarity measure that we can do. So normally, okay, we do grouping by using this or mind, but how do machines do? We have clustering algorithm. We have two kinds of basic clustering algorithm, hierarchical and partition. Again, in hierarchical, you have agglomerate. Hierarchical means you can assume it to be top-down parsing. Partition, bottom-up, that's all. This is top-down, this is bottom-up. Top-down means agglomerative and divisive approach we have. In partition, you have k-means, k-mode, k-median, everything we have. And I'll just stop with this actual sequence of procedure of how clustering will do, because actually if you see a very big group, Okay, we cannot really find out into which of the how many number of clusters do we need. Unless or otherwise you instruct the system of how many clusters could be formed, it will go on keeping dividing the system things into n number of clusters, right? So if you have 100 data, 100 different output might be there, a cluster might be there. We don't want really to have that thing. Rather, we want to instruct the system that the 100 data can be put into different kinds of k clusters. So that's what is the first step. You have to set the value of k, and then you have to assign k leaders. From where are we going to start? That's the next point. Okay, because we don't have a defined strategy to say that this is the output or this is where you have to start. So randomly you assign 5 people. Okay, if k value is 5. Okay, so and for every data that you have, check which of the 5 leaders are nearer to them. Okay, so that is what is the next step. So for all the data in that you have at your hand, check whichever is nearest. Whichever is nearest, you just assign to them. Though, and after having segregated into 5 groups of the entire 100 data, you identify the centroids of the cluster. How to find the centroid? Sum up divided by n. Sum up the y values divided by n, that will be the centroid. With this centroid, again, these centroids become your new leader. Now again, you iterate the process. Okay, if the first iteration and the next iteration, if you end up with the same data point in the cluster, you can stop, or else you can go back, try assigning different values to the different cluster. This process to be repeated until in the subsequent iteration, next sequential iteration or consecutive iterations, you end up with the same number of data, not number, same data that remains in the clusters, right? So with this, we'll go and see one clustering implementation. Yeah, this is classification. I think I haven't taken clustering. Okay, I'll explain here itself. Ma'am, Anandi ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Yeah, I am taking the clustering. Meanwhile, if there are questions from the audience, you can tell me.
Yes.
Okay.
So any questions, kindly post in the chat box. Kausalya ma'am, kindly read the questions, ma'am. We are getting questions.
Hello.
Yeah, ma'am, tell me.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, there's a question, ma'am. Is there any proper resource to start working with ML?
There are different resources, ma'am. My channel is also a resource. If you feel you
Okay,
have
ma'am.
to start with basics, you can. Actually, if you want to be more related towards the mathematical concept of machine learning, you can go for Andrew Ng or Abu Mustafa. But if you doesn't want to go really in terms of mathematical background, you can go with other implementation procedures. Lot many are available in Coursera also. I do have so many things, that is videos on the basics of
Okay,
ML.
ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am. They're saying like how to really start with because data science is like it's very hot, like lot of job opportunities are there, like students are asking like how to really start I mean to learn things, what is the right way to start.
No, actually, to start, no, there is, it's not really hard as we actually think of. It's only the starting problem that all of us would have, not more than that, really. Actually, that's what I would say. After getting into that, it will automatically take you to the next level of integration. Okay, so you don't need to really bother about whether you can understand or is what if the data set is too high, whether you are having enough what to say the infrastructure in your laptop or nothing. You need to worry. As of now, to start with, you have the Google Colab provided with very high-end infrastructure. Even we don't have in our laptop, so you can start working on that and start with simple text data. That's the main thing. Okay, go to the repository, use the most popular data sets that people use. This wine data set, if you see, otherwise I'll show you, you say repository in a minute. So, so that is the way to start with. Okay, I opened this clustering. First, I'll complete. I'll come back to the question. I'll just show you one clustering. Otherwise, I won't feel it is complete. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so there are different clustering algorithms that are available. K-mode, K-means, and K-medoids are the most simple thing. This K-mode you will use for data which is of categorical format, right? So categorical in the sense, if in your data set you have A, B, C, D, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all these things are categorical values. Likewise, if you have, you can go for K mode. Okay, so what I did here is I have created one data set of my own. Okay, having two columns, A1 and A2. A1 is having, see, now you look at, you can clearly understand there are values like 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we don't have any more values there in this A1 column, and hence it is a categorical data, right? Even though if it is a number, it is a categorical data because it has only specified values. Now you take column A2, A, B, C, only these three values are repeating, okay, and hence it is a categorical data. If things are of this kind, you go for K-mode clustering, or else if you have continuous data, that is, even if you have data from 1 to 10, okay, running continuously, you can go for K-means or K-medoids clustering. Right now, what I did, it's very easy in sklearn. All are implemented at a stretch. So K modes of, I'm giving how many clusters I want to form from my data set. So the number of clusters is going to be 3. Okay, this verbose is to state whether my output has to be elaborated here or not. That's all. Right, I want the elaboration to be done over here, and hence it is given as verbose one. Okay, now the number of clusters will be formed using K-modes underscore test, which is nothing but that my object value dot, the method that is available is fit underscore predict, of for which I have to give this array. Okay, so array is nothing but, because here we don't have an output column, the entire data set has to be assumed as a input column. Okay, so predict of x. Now we are printing how many, what is the output. So you could see this is in, if you set verbose is equal to 1, automatically it prints how it is doing the work. Initialization method and algorithm are deterministic, setting and initiation to 1. Initialize the value to the first iteration. So it is initializing the centroid, it is initializing the clusters. Okay, so centroid means it will randomly pick, if I give 3 as the cluster, it will randomly pick 3 data from our data set as the clusters. Okay, and it starts its iteration for run number 1. Okay, for iteration 1 or 100, because sometimes the cluster may be formed, sometimes the cluster may not form, and it will end up with an infinite loop, and hence the maximum iteration that can run upon has to be given. So that is 100 by default. and finally it is giving you the clusters, right? So how many data do we have here? Actually 8 data, right? And it is telling into which of the cluster you need to fix in all these things. See, you look at this, the first data should go to second cluster, the second, third data should go to first cluster, and it likewise it goes. And if you print the centroids, okay, you could see 1C is the first centroid, 2B is the second centroid, 1A is the third centroid. Visually, if you see, you could see the black dots form one and green dots form another, and this yellow dots form the third cluster. Okay, if you feel this clustering is not enough, you can run iterations by changing your clusters. Okay, so manual, how to manually understand how this cluster is being formed, in my channel I have taken one Excel sheet and I have shown how the clusters needs to be done manually. You can go through that and you can find. This is K-mode. If you want, I can share the sheet also, not an issue. So this is for k-means clustering. So you could see the clusters are formed using this. So all these are 2 is the number of clusters. We have given n underscore clusters is equal to 2, and yellow represents one cluster and this dark blue represents another cluster. See, and the same KNN clustering we have, I haven't drawn, but it is you can see the this is classification. Actually, KNN alone, if you see, it can be used both for classification as well as for clustering. Okay, so it is used in both the senses. K-means, K-midoids and K-modes all used only for clustering. Okay, so that is about what I thought can demonstrate you for today. Now coming back to the question, yes ma'am, we can start the question session.
Yes, ma'am. Priya, ma'am, start, ma'am.
Yeah, actually one question the students are asking, right? So actually it is better to start with a very famous data set. So I'll show you in an UCI repository. So UCI repository will look like this. UCI machine learning repository you go. Okay, on to the right you could see lot of most popular data set. Any machine learning model, if you say, they will start teaching you with the iris data set, right? Wine data set, because they are most famous. You can understand a lot of things with the by default data set, right? So you can pick up to start. If you are new to this domain, you can start downloading any of these data sets. Suppose if I go to this wine data set, by default it will tell you, okay, so what are the different attributes it has, integer and real, what are the tasks that you can do, it is classification, right? So how many instances are there? 178. How many attributes does it have? 13 attributes. Is there any missing value? No, right? All the things they have given, okay. And what are the different data, the information about what the 13 columns correspond to will be given. And if you want to download, you can go to this data folder and you can download the data set also. Okay, so how to do that is there. Actually some of the data sets, if you download, it won't come as a, see, wine.data, it will come as a data file rather than a CSV or an Excel, and hence you should know clearly how to convert that data file. See, actually you cannot really open it in Excel, right? But if you go to Excel and open this winded data, it will get opened by means of a textual format. So how to convert that into a Excel, I have given as a video completely. But generally not everything will be of the data format. You can have text also. So if you open up this iris data set, you could see, I'll go to the data folder. Yeah, this is also in data format. So data, CSV and Excel, all are the common formats that you do have. Okay, so you could see the hits, how many number of times it is downloaded. It shows the popularity of the data set, that's all. So to start with, you can download one such data set having only few rows, like in hundreds, followed by what is called as your what to say, the numeric value, okay, numbers or text alone, not images to start with. You complete that, and when it comes up, when it is free for you to work with, you can proceed for image databases. Yes ma'am, any other question?
Participants, you have any more questions?
Hello.
Participants? Yeah. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, I have one doubt.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, actually, if we select any data set from UCI,
Mm.
whether it is having it support only for numerical or any string type of data set, ma'am?
No. In UCI itself, they will give. If you look at this attribute, no, they will say whether it is having string attribute or integer and real. All machine
Okay.
learning algorithm, at the end, you should have only numeric values.
Okay.
Except this decision tree can support string value, but most of the other algorithm you should convert it into numeric values and you should work. But if you go to this data set information itself, you can see what type of attributes it has. So this clearly shows that only real values are there.
Ma'am, one more doubt. Actually, so I suppose that is I work out on a decision tree data set. So here we have summary about the particular data set when you are using decision tree. So here we are having incorrectly classification and correctly classification. It's like we have some number, ma'am. So
That is accurate. Like you are testing it with the actual data set. No, it tries to map. It tries to compute the output from the created model. Okay, if it is exactly matching with your actual model, it is correct. Otherwise, it is in the wrong, right? So that is the proper classification. And if there is a mismatch, we say it is improper classification. That's an error.
So how we can classify? How we can rectify the error?
No.
In our data
It
set?
is no. You should not rectify the error in your data set. Data set remains the same. Na? You have to apply some other algorithm. It means that the decision tree is not properly fitting your data set.
Okay.
See, there are two things. One is there are hyperparameters that are available, right? Hyperparameter is nothing but your adjustment parameters which you can vary. Let's say if in perceptron we have learning rate, right? We have students, and if they are dull, we are changing the strategy of learning. That is, we can that is increase the learning rate or slow down the learning rate, depends on how they perform. Those we call it as hyperparameter. Either you can adjust and try to map your input and output properly with the same model you are choosing. If it doesn't give you proper accuracy, you have to go for selecting another model.
Actually, ma'am, that is I have a customer data set. The customer ID, customer name, customer purchase, etc. Okay. So when I tried that, it shows like that. Okay. So I have to use another data, another algorithm
Algorithm. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Thank you.
So any other questions from the participants? Ma'am, there is one question.
Yes,
can we use our own data set for research purpose, or do we need to use only benchmark data set?
No, not necessarily. If pertaining to our domain, it is we are free to use our own data set, but your data set has to be normalized and like any, for example, if there is a questionnaire, you need to standardize it, right? Likewise, your data set needs to be standardized using the domain of a domain expert or somewhere. That's all.
Okay,
domain expert, you choose either it may be your guide or your colleague or any expert working on that field. Just normalize your data set or standardize your data set. That's all. You are free to choose your own data sets. But in research purpose, if you take, we need a that is an already available model to compare our results. No. So our data set alone won't be fine. So for that, for comparing, we may go for benchmark data set.
Yes, ma'am. There is one more question, ma'am. How EDA, that is exploratory data analysis, so how it helps, how this EDA tasks helps in data science?
Yeah, exploratory data analysis talks much about the pre-processing. Not more than that. Outlier analysis, your normalization, then how will you balance your data set? For example, if you go take one cancer data set, okay, so if you are collecting data from 1 lakh people, Okay, it's not really, it's very hard to find at least 100 positive cases, whereas all the 99,900 records will be with negative cases, right? So it's not actually a balanced data set. So what happens, when you train using such imbalanced data set, all our training or all the system will learn only the negativity, not the positivity, because it is only very feeble available. So it is like having our kids growing in a positive environment or a negative environment. So exploratory data analysis talks in detail about how to handle with data sets before getting ready for machine learning or deep learning. So that's more important to understand rather than understanding the machine learning algorithms.
So, ma'am,
Yeah.
there is one more, ma'am. In data science, only Python can use or any other languages?
Anything, ma'am, like R tool is available. In Java also, all the packages are nowadays coming up. Python is very easier for the end user to start learning and using because it's an open source. It is getting accommodated with a lot of packages on a daily basis. So that's the only convenience. And if you want to convert this modeling into a real-time application, so Python would be of interest. So the Python provides a package called Flask through which you can create an interface for your own, even using AI technologies. But in Java, if you go, Java is also pretty good, but it needs a lot of coding. That's the only difference. Or you can use MATLAB, you can use Weka tool. All are available.
Okay, ma'am. The next question is, what is the difference between data optimization and data normalization?
Optimization is completely different. Normalization is just transferring your data into a standard scale. Optimization is it is to arrive at an optimized output based on the domain conditions we have. Both are on different scales. We have in optimization, we have Lagrangian optimization, genetic algorithm, you have evolutionary algorithms. Okay, this Firefly algorithm, all these things are. No? So that is, let's say, for example, if we give minimize this based on these pretty conditions, there we go for optimization. It's actually ahead of this machine learning strategies. Both are on different sides. But normalization is a concept that we use here or in optimization. So it is just to transfer your data into a standardized format.
Okay, ma'am. The next question is, like, when we use clustering algorithms, the clustering number, I think they mean the number of clusters, it should be lesser or greater for a data set?
It depends on the data set we have. Normally, we won't go for too much of clusters. 7 to 10 is what we use. But it depends on the domain only. So there is a method called elbow method, which we use for deciding the number of clusters. So we set the clusters from starting like 2 to, so let's say if we start with 5 number of clusters, and then go to 6, 7, 8, and increase the number of cluster, obtain the performance. Whichever number of cluster is giving you proper solution, automatically you can take that number of clusters as the optimal one. So like that way only we have to proceed.
Okay, ma'am. So they have asked us to share some free best ebooks for machine learning, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am. I'll share, ma'am. I'll share.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you. And one more thing, like, which ML algorithm is best for analyzing the medical data set?
No. It depends on the data set again. Actually, if it is an image data set, go for CNN. If it is a numeric data set and if it has an output column, then go for any like prediction algorithm or classification algorithm. So medical data set as such, we cannot tell. No, medical data set depends on what kind of data it has, you can choose.
Okay. So
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So that's all, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank you for the opportunity
ma'am.
given to me.
Yes,
Anandi, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am. Sukanya, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank you so
ma'am.
much for your time with us. We really had a great session, ma'am. You explained each and every concept in a practical way. Your blog is really a resourceful one. we will all follow your blog, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, ma'am, kindly conclude, ma'am.
Sure, ma'am. So I would like to thank our management, chairman sir, principal sir, and the head of department for their constant support and motivation in organizing such events. I also would like to thank the entire team behind who extended their fullest support for making this event a grand success. And I hope this workshop served as a platform and transferred the conceptual knowledge about machine learning algorithms and also the hands-on knowledge to work with the ML algorithms. So I hope this event will help you to proceed further in your career path. I'm wishing you all success, to all my participants. So thank you. And a few instructions for the participants. So we'll be sharing the feedback link in the chat box, so you can do that. And also we will share all the workshop materials, all the PPT materials, and all the relevant links and the materials, resources, whatever you have asked. So all those will be sent to all the participants. Even it will be shared in WhatsApp group and in the through email. So that's about thing for the participants. So thank you all for your support.
So
Thank you.
For the participants, you kindly share your blog from your side, ma'am, on your voice, because many are asking about your blog.
Okay.
In blog, I don't have too much of material, only the data sets. You can check in my channel, YouTube channel, and the blog also. Ma'am, with the materials, I'll send all the links.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a day or two, I will share all the materials with the links. Okay, so that you can circulate to the participants.
Sure.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah,
Thank you, Suganya ma'am. It was really an excellent,
Yeah, yeah.
wonderful session.
Thank you, ma'am.
It was really nice. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your support. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.